Something about Helluva Boss always manages to surprise me. Just when you think you know exactly what this show is capable of, it drops something completely unexpected, like Mission Zero. And this time, it wasn't just another episode. It was a full-blown reimagining of the original pilot. A redo that promised to fix everything that felt rough or outdated about the first one, while still keeping the chaotic energy we fell in love with years ago. But did it actually live up to that massive promise? Or did it just polish nostalgia without giving us something new? That's what we're about to find out, because Mission Zero isn't just a remake, it's a statement. When I first heard that Vivziepop and her team were redoing the pilot, I'll admit I was skeptical. The original may have been rough around the edges, sure, but it had that raw spark that set the whole series in motion. There was charm in its chaos, humor in its awkward pacing, and a strange warmth hidden behind all the murder and swearing. But now that Mission Zero has officially dropped, on Amazon Prime no less, it's clear this wasn't just a simple upgrade. From the first few seconds, you can feel how much love, time, and precision went into rebuilding this story from the ground up. The episode opens in familiar territory: Blitz, chaos, and the world of I.M.P, but everything feels sharper, brighter, and far more confident. It's as if the studio finally found the perfect balance between the heart and humor that make this show what it is. Right from the start, the difference in animation quality hits you like a punch. The shadows are deeper, the lighting more vibrant, and every expression feels alive. It's not just a visual glow-up, it's emotional storytelling through movement. Blitz's face is more expressive than ever. His smirks, his breakdowns, even his ridiculous grin when he's planning something stupid, all of it pops off the screen. Luna's redesign looks incredible too. Smooth, modern, but still recognizable. And when Blitz casually confirms that Luna's 22, it's like a meta wink to the fandom, finally putting years of speculation to rest. It's such a small moment, but it tells you a lot about how self-aware this episode is. Mission Zero isn't pretending to start from scratch. It knows its audience. It knows the jokes, the arguments, and the memes that fans have built around the show. And it plays with all of them. But beyond visuals, it's the tone that really stands out. The original pilot had that mockumentary format that made it feel like a wild test run, something experimental, almost disconnected from the rest of the series. Mission Zero, though, drops that approach completely. It runs like a proper episode, with tight pacing, a clear storyline, and the signature energy we've come to expect from the Helluva Boss formula. Blitz narrates a quick bit of lore before we're thrown into another one of his chaotic missions, and it just feels right. You can tell the writers weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. They were refining it. Everything moves faster, but never too fast. Every joke lands with purpose. The comedic timing feels polished, yet natural, and that's not easy to pull off when you're remaking something fans already know by heart. And speaking of jokes, Mission Zero delivers plenty of them. This is one of those episodes that remembers what made Helluva Boss so fun in the first place. After a few recent episodes that leaned heavily on emotional arcs and darker storytelling, this one brings the laughter back front and center. From Luna teasing Moxxie to the absurdly over-the-top romantic antics of Stolas, it's packed with moments that make you grin even when you don't want to. The humor lands because it's confident in itself. It's not trying too hard. It's dirty, chaotic, but it feels like classic Helluva Boss again. There's something refreshing about seeing the team embrace their weirdness without apology. Still, Mission Zero isn't just a nostalgia trip. It's also a statement of evolution. Every shot, every line, every sound cue seems to scream, "We've grown." The music, for example, is phenomenal. The revamped I.M.P jingle doesn't just sound good, it feels like the perfect callback. That mix of new energy with old charm creates this strange sense of comfort, like revisiting a place you haven't been in years but instantly recognize. The episode even finds clever ways to hint at future storylines, dropping small visual details that you might miss if you blink. There's one frame with all of the series' villains, and in the background, an unfamiliar figure. Another detail that caught my attention is how they handled Stolas. In the original pilot, he was more of a straightforward villain. Creepy, menacing, a little one-dimensional. But here, he's fully evolved into the version we know from the main series. Obsessive, funny, oddly endearing. His interactions with Blitz are equal parts uncomfortable and hilarious, perfectly balancing comedy with character depth. You can see the evolution of Vivziepop's storytelling philosophy in real time. the confidence to turn what used to be caricatures into layered, memorable personalities. It's one of the most noticeable improvements over the original pilot, and it's handled so effortlessly that it makes you forget just how different Stolas used to be. What's also worth appreciating is how self-contained Mission Zero feels. Despite being a remake, it stands on its own. You could easily start here as a new viewer and immediately understand what Helluva Boss is about, a mix of humor, heart, and hellish chaos. It sets the tone for the show better than the 2020 pilot ever could. That's a huge deal, especially for a franchise that's grown so much in scope and audience. The pacing is perfect too. 10.5 minutes of pure entertainment that never drags, never overstays its welcome, but still manages to deliver everything it needs to. By the time the ending rolls around, you realize that Mission Zero isn't just a new version of an old story. It's a celebration of how far the series and its creators have come. It's a reminder of what makes Helluva Boss so unique. Unapologetically weird humor, stunning animation, and a deep love for its chaotic little cast of characters. And while some fans might nitpick missing jokes or recycled scenes, the truth is, Mission Zero isn't here to replace the pilot. It's here to honor it. One of the most fascinating things about Mission Zero is how confidently it carries itself. There's this feeling that the creators finally know exactly what kind of show they're making. Back when the original pilot dropped, Helluva Boss still felt like an experiment, a crazy concept with potential, but one that was still trying to find its voice. Now, that voice is loud, confident, and unafraid to be ridiculous. Mission Zero feels like the culmination of everything VivziePop and her team have learned from years of refining their craft. Every frame feels intentional, every line feels sharper, and every bit of chaos has a purpose. It's that strange kind of confidence that— Let's talk about the writing for a moment, because that's where the real transformation becomes clear. The dialogue is quick, natural, and doesn't feel forced. Each character sounds like themselves. Not like they're performing for the audience, but like they're actually living in this absurd world. Blitz's one-liners are sharper than ever. Moxxie and Millie bounce off each other with effortless chemistry, and Luna finally feels comfortable in her role. The humor is adult, without trying too hard to shock, and the pacing of the jokes feels smoother than ever. There's something about the timing in Mission Zero that just hits differently. The jokes don't linger too long, the emotional moments don't drag, and transitions between tones feel natural. That's not easy to pull off in a 10-minute episode that's juggling action, comedy, lore, and nostalgia all at once. But while the comedy shines, it's the emotional undertones that give Mission Zero its real strength. Beneath all the absurdity, you can sense a quiet awareness, a feeling that these characters, no matter how ridiculous, are still growing. Blitz's moments with Stolas aren't just there for laughs anymore. There's tension, awkwardness, and just the slightest flicker of something deeper. You can see Blitz struggling between his pride and his emotions, something that's been building throughout the series. That's what's so clever about Mission Zero. It manages to feel lighthearted and fun, yet it still plants the seeds for heavier storylines down the road. It's as if the writers were saying, "Don't worry, the heart of Helluva Boss is still here. We're just reminding you that we know how to make you laugh before we make you cry again." The structure of the episode also deserves credit. It flows effortlessly from scene to scene without feeling rushed. There's a rhythm to it that mirrors the chaos of the I.M.P crew, but still keeps the viewer grounded. You're constantly entertained, but you're never lost. Even when the episode briefly dips into exposition, it never drags. Blitz's narration about the lore feels natural, woven into the story rather than dumped on the audience. That balance between world-building and storytelling is something the pilot struggled with, but here, it's seamless. It's the difference between telling a story because you have to and telling a story because you want to. Now, if there's one thing that really sets Mission Zero apart, it's the attention to visual detail. Every shot looks carefully planned and beautifully executed. The lighting alone could tell a story, from the warm glow in the office scenes to the sharp contrast of the hellish backdrops. There's a visual rhythm that guides the viewer's emotions without them even realizing it. For example, in scenes where Blitz and Stolas interact, the colors subtly shift, warmer when Stolas speaks, colder when Blitz reacts. It's a small thing, but it shows just how much thought went into every aspect of production. Even the backgrounds are loaded with personality. You can pause almost any frame and find small Easter eggs, jokes, or references to previous episodes. It's the kind of craftsmanship that rewards fans who pay attention. Another standout element is the sound design and voice acting. Brandon Rogers as Blitz once again proves why he's such a perfect fit for the character. His energy, timing, and comedic instincts elevate every line. There's a rhythm to his performance. He can switch from loud and unhinged to subtle and sarcastic in a single breath, and it always feels natural. Bryce Pinkham, Erica Lindbeck, and Richard Horvitz also bring their A-game, delivering performances that feel polished but still full of raw energy. And of course, Bryce's Stolas continues to be a highlight. The way he balances charm and obsession makes every interaction between him and Blitz feel like a tug-of-war between humor and heartbreak. But what's even more impressive is how the episode uses sound and music to build emotion. The reworked I.M.P. jingle isn't just catchy, it's symbolic. It represents everything Mission Zero is trying to do. Take something familiar and make it even better. The song feels like a love letter to fans who have been around since the beginning, reminding them why they fell in love with the show in the first place. The music swells at the right moments, fades when it needs to, and never overwhelms the dialogue. It's perfectly mixed, giving the episode a cinematic feel that few animated web series ever achieve. Now, let's talk about pacing, because Mission Zero might just have nailed it perfectly. 10.5 minutes may sound short, but the episode somehow manages to feel full without ever feeling cluttered. It hits every beat, setup, conflict, resolution, without missing a step. There's no wasted time, no awkward filler, and no unnecessary scenes. The writers clearly went through the original pilot with a fine-toothed comb, identifying what worked and what didn't, and rebuilt everything from scratch. It's like watching the same melody played by a full orchestra instead of a garage band. The soul is the same, but the execution is on a completely different level. And perhaps the most satisfying part of Mission Zero is how it handles nostalgia. It never feels cheap or manipulative. When familiar lines or moments appear, they feel earned. You recognize them instantly, but they don't exist just to make you remember the past. They're there to make you appreciate how far things have come. The callbacks feel natural, the jokes land better, and the emotional beats resonate more because you can see the growth behind them. This isn't just a remake, it's a reflection, a look back at where Helluva Boss started, and a confident step toward where it's going. By the time the first half of the episode wraps up, you realize how much has changed. Not just in visuals or pacing, but in spirit. Mission Zero is proof that even chaos can evolve. It's familiar enough to comfort you, yet bold enough to surprise you. And that balance, that razor-thin line between nostalgia and innovation, is what makes this episode so fascinating to watch. It's not trying to replace the pilot, it's rewriting the memory of it. Not to erase what came before, but to remind us why we cared in the first place. As the episode progresses, it becomes clear that Mission Zero isn't just about retelling an old story, it's about redefining the foundation of Helluva Boss itself. The remake works almost like a mirror, reflecting what the show once was while highlighting how far it's come. Watching it side by side with the original pilot feels like seeing two different generations of animation clash in the best possible way. The pilot was rough, edgy, and a little all over the place, but that's what made it charming. Mission Zero, on the other hand, is refined, deliberate, and self-aware. It understands its audience, and it's not afraid to poke fun at its own history. That's part of what makes it so entertaining. You can feel the team's love for the source material in every scene. There's this one fascinating shift that longtime fans will immediately notice: the tone. In the pilot, the humor was more shock-based, leaning on crude jokes and chaotic timing to make you laugh. It worked for what it was, but it also made the story feel scattered. Mission Zero still embraces that signature vulgar humor, but it does so with purpose. The swearing, the sexual innuendos, the absurd gags, they all serve a rhythm now. It's not just edgy for the sake of being edgy, it's character-driven. Every punchline adds to who these demons are and how they interact. It's clever writing disguised as chaos. The result is a tighter, more mature episode that feels like it truly belongs in the modern lineup. Still, the comparison with the original pilot reveals something interesting about how comedy evolves. Back when the pilot came out, a lot of jokes hit because they were new. Blitz's over-the-top insurance line, for example, became an instant meme in the fandom. It was crude, ridiculous, and weirdly memorable. But in Mission Zero, that line doesn't return. And at first, that might disappoint fans who wanted every classic moment preserved. But when you think about it, leaving that joke out makes sense. The writers clearly didn't want to rely too heavily on nostalgia. They wanted to prove that they could make new moments just as iconic as the old ones. And they did. Luna teasing Moxxie about being gay, Stolas' hilariously romantic decorations, or the cameo gag with Viv and Brandon. They're all fresh, funny, and on brand for this version of the show. It's a different flavor of humor, but it fits perfectly with where Helluva Boss is now. That being said, Mission Zero doesn't shy away from acknowledging its own quirks. It's not afraid to laugh at itself, and that's part of the charm. The brief meta moments, like when the creators cameo only to get obliterated seconds later, are a perfect example of how self-aware this series has become. It's playful, bold, and a little bit insane, but that's exactly what Helluva Boss fans signed up for. What's interesting is that this meta approach never feels forced. It's integrated naturally into the humor, so it doesn't break immersion. It's almost as if the creators are saying, yeah, we know this is ridiculous, but that's why you love it. Now, one of the few areas where Mission Zero may divide fans is the repetition of certain scenes. The moment where Blitz steals the grimoire, for example, appears once again, marking the third time we've seen this event across the show's timeline. It's a visually updated version, sure, but it doesn't bring anything particularly new to the table. That said, it's understandable why they kept it. For new viewers starting with Mission Zero, it's an essential bit of context. For returning fans, it's a reminder of how this story connects to the wider lore. Still, it's fair to wish they had added a new twist or line, like Stella's line from Season 2, Episode 1, which added a great layer of humor. These are small things, but in a show this detail-oriented, even minor choices stand out. And then there's the issue of censorship, which caught quite a few people off guard. Mission Zero, along with the rest of the new releases, was advertised as being fully uncensored. Fans expected raw, unfiltered dialogue, with every curse word and explicit joke intact. But instead, the episode still bleeped or pixelated a few moments. For example, Blitz's board scene is censored and Stolas' phone rant has heavy bleeps, similar to the early days of the series. Now, on one hand, this might have been intentional. The bleeps and pixelation are almost used as comedic timing, callbacks to the old format. But on the other hand, after promising an uncensored experience, it's easy to see why some fans felt a bit let down. The joke has been done before, and at this point, many viewers just wanted the show to lean into its full adult tone without holding back. It's not a deal-breaker by any means, but it's a noticeable detail that keeps the episode from feeling as bold as its marketing implied. That said, the technical execution is near flawless otherwise. The animation flows like liquid. Transitions are buttery smooth, and the visual storytelling is more dynamic than ever. Characters move with purpose, not just motion. You can tell exactly what they're feeling based on their gestures or expressions. Even the fight scenes, short as they are, have that distinct kinetic energy this series has become known for. And while the humor keeps things light, the animation quietly carries emotional weight. It's that unspoken layer that gives Mission Zero depth. You can sense the effort and attention poured into every detail, from the way Blitz's eyes glow in dim light, to the faint texture in the backgrounds that make Hell feel more alive than ever. But what really elevates this episode above the original is direction and tone control. In the pilot, the pacing sometimes veered between manic and sluggish, never quite finding a middle ground. Mission Zero fixes that completely. The rhythm here is tight, snappy, and full of momentum. There's never a dull moment, but it also never feels overwhelming. You can actually breathe between jokes, take in the world, and appreciate the craftsmanship. That's a level of control that comes only with experience. VivziePop's direction shines here. Every scene transitions seamlessly, and the storytelling feels deliberate. You can tell the team wanted to make something that would stand the test of time, not just go viral for a week. And it's not just the visuals or pacing that have improved. The characters themselves feel more defined. Blitz's personality is consistent, complex, and undeniably entertaining. You can see flashes of insecurity behind his loud confidence, something that the pilot only hinted at. Stolas' obsession feels less creepy and more tragic now, like there's genuine longing behind his absurd devotion. Luna's sarcasm has softened into wit. making her feel less like an edgy side character and more like a believable member of the team. Even Moxxie and Millie, who sometimes fade into the background in other episodes, get moments to shine here. Their relationship feels sweet, silly, and authentic. It's this consistency that makes Mission Zero such a satisfying watch. Everything about it feels intentional. The humor is sharper, the tone more cohesive, and the world more immersive. It's the same Helluva Boss you remember, just filtered through a more experienced lens. And while it's not perfect, nothing ever is. It achieves what few remakes can. It makes the original feel nostalgic without making it obsolete. Mission Zero doesn't erase the pilot's legacy. Instead, it strengthens it. It reminds you that the chaos you loved back then has evolved into something even more polished, but still just as wild. And maybe that's the biggest win of all. Not just for the fans, but for the creators who dared to revisit their beginnings and make them shine brighter than ever.